Good morning. I was very much getting into Diva Pramal, so I let it go on a little bit longer. So welcome. Just delighted to see everybody here. First of all, can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up, thumbs down? I'll get some thumbs. Yay! That is wonderful. Thank you for that. So as always, we begin with a welcome and a recognition of what we're creating here together. Thank you for being here, participating with me and co-creating this sacred space this morning. A space of love and support, of caring and compassion, and hopefully some inspiration as well. So I encourage you to bring your whole self, your authentic self, whoever you are or feel in this present moment. We are striving to be a radically inclusive community, dedicated to love and to justice. Whoever you are, whoever you love, however you express your identity, whatever might be your life situation, whatever you believe or don't believe, whatever the color of your skin, whatever your age, whether you have physical or mental or spiritual challenges, whether today you are filled with love and joy, or perhaps you are filled with sadness, whether you need space to just be this morning, or whether you are eager to engage with others, whether you have brought your best self this morning or your struggling self, whether you come with an open heart or feel closed down because of wounds you carry, or because of fear or shame or lack of trust. There is a place for you here. We hope today you find something that makes you think differently and find something that touches your heart. And perhaps something that makes you feel at least a bit uncomfortable, because that is how we grow. As an aside, I was having lunch with Celeste this last week, and we were giggling because we decided that as Unitarians, we might say, and I hope I'm made to feel uncomfortable this morning, because that is how I grow. So I thought that was a wonderful thing to add, that we don't mind being uncomfortable, because we do want to try and see how we can live life in new and different and more positive ways. So whoever you are not alone. You are welcome here. And so with that, Elspeth is going to do our chalice lighting. And because we're talking about Bodhisattvas this morning, there's a beautiful book by Shantideva that is entitled The Way of the Bodhisattva. And Elspeth's going to read the last part of the Bodhisattva prayer. So Elspeth, I'll turn that over to you.
May I be the guardian for those without protection. May I be the guide for the travelers on the way. May I be a boat, a raft, and a bridge for those who wish to cross. For beings as limitless as space in every possible way, may I be their source for life till every being attains peace.
Thank you, Elspeth. I just always get inspired by that. So this morning for our song, we're actually going to do a chant that we've done before, but I wanted to share with you something very near and dear to my heart. And so I'm going to share my screen for a moment and show you a very specific place that I have meditated in many times. Back in the States, in a place called Kansas City, Missouri, there was an art museum that had created this beautiful, actually recreated a Buddhist temple from China. Now, of course, I'll set aside the fact that some Americans stole the artifacts of China, but be that as it may, it's beautiful the way they recreated the space, and I would even say the feeling. And so you would go into this particular floor of the museum and you would walk down this long corridor and you would see this statue out of wood called Kuan Yin, the Bodhisattva of compassion and mercy. So you could see also in this photo that they even recreated part of the temple ceiling. So the acoustics in this small room were so amazing. So they allowed us Buddhists in there once a month to have about 40 of us go and chant various chants. And so we would sit in front of this beautiful statue. And you can just imagine in this just amazing space, thinking about all the people who had meditated and chanted in front of the statue in these walls under this ceiling. And we would chant for maybe 20 minutes. And by the time we were done, we would just sit in silence. And the feeling was as if every molecule in your body was vibrating. So with that, we're not going to chant that long this morning. We'll just do it for a few minutes. But we're going to look at the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin of compassion and mercy. And one other thing that I think is helpful as you look at the statue as we chant, you can see that the leg is standing down, ready to come and help you at a moment's notice when you would go to Kuan Yin and talk of your troubles. Another interesting fact about this statue, the sculpture, is that it was not considered to be either specifically male or female. It was thought to be neutral, and whoever came to this bodhisattva for help could envision Kuan Yin to be male or female or whatever they felt would most help them. And so with that, this morning we're going to chant Lama Cheno, which we've done before. And it has some meaning with what I'm going to talk about in a little bit about being a bodhisattva. It's a very easy chant. I think you can follow along easily. Obviously, sadly, we won't be able to chant all together, but imagine that we're in this room doing so. And Lama Cheno has a very easy meaning. It's simply calling in the lamas. The lama was a teacher, but it really means calling in the Buddhas and bodhisattvas of all times and all places. And so this energetic feeling that we can get, like we are calling upon Kuan Yin to help us in this moment. The Buddhas and bodhisattvas of all time, bodhisattvas who are aspiring to awaken and are wanting to help us awaken as well. So I'll start and then just feel on mute to feel free to join in if you would like. Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno. Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno. Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno. Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Cheno, Lama Chechano, Lama Chano, Lama Chano, 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 Lama Chechano. And now we'll just sit in meditation for a few minutes. Just feel free that you're sitting in a comfortable position. You sort of let go of any stress or tightness that you might be holding somewhere in your body. Allow yourself this gift to just sit, just breathe, and just be. Thank you for just sharing some silent time with me. I always appreciate that we can meditate on our own, but there's something much more powerful about doing it as a group. And I feel like seriously supported and encouraged by each of you as I watch you meditating. You watch me, or close your eyes, whichever you prefer. Anyway, let me close this out and get to my wonderful topic, something I really enjoy talking about. And that is this concept of being a bodhisattva. And as I noted, it's translated as an aspiration to awaken our being and to help others awaken as well. And I want to point out that I'm not using the word enlightenment here because some would think that enlightenment sounds too lofty and that maybe only a few people can attain it. But when Buddha was asked in the Pali Canon, what are you? Are you a teacher? Are you a prophet? And the Buddha would say, no, I'm just awake. And so I think that putting it in that context helps us feel inspired and encouraged that we have what it takes to awaken in our own lives in this moment, in every moment. And so I thought I'd give a little context. Some of you may already know this, that Buddhism originated in northern India about 2,500 years ago. There was a young man who left his family and decided to wander in the wilderness because he wanted to find a way simply to relieve suffering. And he sat under a tree, it is said, allegedly. He sat under the tree one night and just sat. And in the morning, this is what he discovered, which is actually the essence of Buddhism. He discovered that he did not have to get triggered and react to his thoughts, his emotions, or his physical sensations. That there was a way that we could learn, that we could practice to just simply let them arise and fall away of their own accord. And this may sound very simple, but I think all of us know there are many times when we have a thought or we have an emotion that arises, or there's some physical sensation of some pain or suffering. And in that moment, it can be very difficult to find the way to just simply let it arise and fall away. And so I think that's why this discovery so long ago still has so much great power today. It can make a difference in our contemporary lives. So the other thing that the Buddha conveyed early on was what he did, anyone else can do. That we are innately able, we have everything innately within us to just realize we can wake up and experience ourselves and the world differently. And so in the beginning, there was a tradition that is now called Theravadan, which is found in the Pali Canon. But what happened after the Buddha died is that, as in all religions, people start making up new things that the original teacher didn't say. And over time, the Theravadins decided that, well, there was only one Buddha, and therefore nobody else gets to be a Buddha but Buddha. But if you could awaken, but then you were an arhat. So then you were kind of something less than a Buddha. And so around the year 100 before Common Era, some Buddhists began to rethink this understanding. And there was found a writing called the Lotus Sutra. And in this writing, it said some amazing things. I would interpret it as going back to what the Buddha was originally trying to convey. In the Lotus Sutra, it states that anyone can become enlightened. Anyone can be a Buddha. And prior to that happening, we could all aspire to be bodhisattvas. We could aspire to awaken, and we could create an environment that would help others awaken as well. So that's what we're going to explore this morning. How we learn to reduce our habitual reactions to our thoughts, our emotions, and our sensations, and how we can help others do so as well. I also want to make a note that sometimes this can sound a little evangelical, but Buddhism is not trying to be evangelical at all. And it's really emphasized in the teachings that what we're striving for is to be role models, that our life would be a role model for others to see how they might be able to relieve their own suffering and the suffering of the world. So being a bodhisattva is a very vast subject, but this morning I'm only going to handle it in two aspects. The first is the more foundational view of holistic. How do we transform from this westernized view of seeing ourselves as solid and separate and permanent people, a person? I'm solid, I'm separate, I'm permanent, and I'm competing with you. This whatever is that I am is trying to interact with you in some form or fashion. But instead, what we found in the Asian culture out of which this came is there was a much different foundational understanding of living. And in fact, you find it in African spirituality as well, that living is a process, that we are in fact a verb and not a noun, that we are always in the process of becoming something new, inseparably interconnected with everything else. And we are all this energy whirling around in space, not separate, not permanent, but rather the soup of all the energy in the universe. So I just want to take a moment and just wherever you're at, to just experience this distinction. Think of yourself as solid, separate, and permanent. Perhaps that's the way you were brought up, as I was, maybe not. But what does that feel like when you feel such a separation between you and others? Just kind of imagine that feeling. Kind of this individualism that, no, I'm going to just take care of myself. Maybe I'll take care of my friends and family, but it's really just us against the world. That is a very Western perspective, as we all know. Now, shifting it from this place of separation, just imagine what it would feel like if we all realized that we are one process. Even as I look at you in these separate Zoom boxes, that I see you look like you're separate. You see like you're a little, everybody's like a little rectangle. And what if that's not accurate? What if even though we aren't physically in the same space, what if we are still part of a collective consciousness that enables us to experience each other, to realize that we may look like form, but we are also the luminous void of energy. Shunyata, as it's called. And so we kind of hold this paradox of we are form and we are just energy. And so we are connected in a collective consciousness, a collective way of being. And so this first idea that comes out of the Buddhist teachings is this is why one would assume that a holistic awakening is possible, that we don't actually have to be in the presence of every single person, that we don't have to be saying something to every other person, but that we can decide how we want to show up in this moment and when we are physically with others or virtually with others. So that's this first component of Buddhism that I think is the foundation, the essence of experiencing ourselves and the world around us differently. The second component is far more practical. And there's many things in the Buddhist teachings about, well, so what? What can I do? When you wake up tomorrow morning, what are you going to do differently that might help you see yourself in the world in a different way? And one of the Bodhisattva practices is called the paramitas, or the perfections, or the completeness. And so some think there's 6, some think there's 10, but I'm going to tell you the 6 that I have been taught by my teacher. And so I'll give you the list, and then I'll go through them individually and ponder as you think of these, how these practices might already be showing up in your own life. So there's generosity, ethics, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom. And so I think we probably have all done some of these 6 practices. So I'm going to put that in the chat box if anybody would just like to see that and have it as a reference point. There you go. So these practices, which Buddhists have practiced for, over 2,000 years, it's said that this is where, no matter where you are, no matter what situation you find yourself in, regardless of what is happening in your life, that these practices can transform the way you experience yourself and experiencing others. So I want to start with the first practice, which is generosity. And I'll admit that when I first was taught these practices and practicing them myself, I was coming out of a phase in my life of being very self-centered, being very selfish. And my life was so messed up at that time. And so when I read about these teachings, I didn't personally feel very generous. But I wanted to see if I could try. And when I first thought about in each moment, well, how could I be generous in this moment? What would it look like if I was generous? It felt like I was just faking it. It felt like I was just pretending to be generous, that I wasn't really a generous person. I didn't think very well of myself back then. But that's the first step in these practices. Even if you don't think of yourself as being very generous, just take that first step of trying to practice generosity in whatever way that might look in your own life. One of the images that is given for this is that just like a rock in a stream that starts off very rough, that after water goes over it again and again, that it slowly smooths to this beautiful new thing that is very much changed by this very slow process of practicing generosity. Some of the things that it's also encouraged is to learn to be generous without expectations, without expecting anything in return. And I find this, I think I'm still working on this one. I know that I need to let go. I just need to be generous with my time, my talents, and my treasures in whatever way feels right. And what do we do if the person, doesn't thank us, or doesn't acknowledge, or doesn't recognize this generosity that we've given to them? And so that is part of this practice, is, can I truly be generous and then let go? I find that when I can, I create a whole lot of less suffering for myself. So going back to the Buddha's original reason for heading out into the wilderness, that he was trying to reduce the level of suffering in his own life and in the world. When I can be generous and let go, I can feel that I'm suffering less than I would if I felt I needed a proper thank you or whatever response I think I'm looking for. So that's generosity. The second practice is ethics, sometimes called ethical discipline. And it's about deciding how we are including honesty, morality, and integrity into our everyday life. so that we'd be delivering our life in a way that benefits others as well as ourselves. Sometimes it's talked about as, how do you live a virtuous life? How do you live a life based on your values? Would you be willing to give up some pleasurable personal experience in order to achieve a broader good in the long run, to reduce suffering in the long run? So I think of committing to this Buddhist path. It's like being an athlete. Athletes begin by practicing over and over and over again. And at the beginning and much of the time, it's not much fun, but over time, athletes develop what is referred to as muscle memory, or being in the zone, when their efforts are rewarded by the ability to achieve certain outcomes over and over again, seemingly effortlessly. And so I think of this practice of ethics, as well as all of the other paramitas, is that it is like we commit to this spiritual path and we commit to being a spiritual athlete, that we're going to exercise our spiritual muscle and enable us to not always be comfortable at the beginning, but eventually over time, it becomes more effortless. And it's just integrated into the everyday way that we respond to our world. One of the things I love about Buddhism is that the Buddha repeatedly taught us that our innate nature is good and honest and ethical. And I think that's extremely important, because I know I wasn't raised that way. I wasn't taught that I was innately good, innately honest, and innately ethical. So sometimes we might cover up our innate goodness with bad habits or coping skills that we've created based on past experiences or trauma. But that doesn't mean that we are our bad habits, that we have the ability to find our innate goodness. It's like a superpower. Like within us is this amazing amount of energy that we can cultivate, and that we can create less suffering for ourselves and others by spending the time being willing to cultivate it. So it's said that we are not making ourselves into somebody new, but rather we're discovering our original way of being. So that's ethics. The third practice is of patience. And when I was thinking about patience this week, it was very easy to think of it because of load shedding. I don't know if others have had this experience, but it's very easy to be irritated at load shedding. First it's level 1, then an hour later it's level 4, then it's level 2, then it's level 3, and then it's suspended, and then it starts again, and you're never sure, is it going to happen or not going to happen? So I've been noticing in my body the sensations of the emotion and sensations of irritation that have arisen in me because of load shedding. And I was talking to my daughter Erica about it. And sometimes we're able to pull this off. Early on last year, the pandemic, we just decided that we were going to practice patience with this unsettled situation that we found ourselves in. If load shedding happens, we're just going to recognize we can't have our technology, and we'll go out and play a game. Or we'll actually talk to each other, or we'll find a way to be in this world in a way that we're not normally used to. So that's what I think about, that every single thing in our life can be an opportunity for practice. Even those things that we find most difficult, when someone is sick or someone has been injured, all those, or in an accident, all those things that strike us at our core. And I think it is truly possible, even in those moments, if we remember, how am I going to practice patience in this moment? How am I going to be generous with myself? So this situation of patience, it's so easy to find an opportunity in a way that you are being triggered, to then the triggering can be, oh, right. Oh, right. Load shedding is a Buddhist practice. And I can remember that I can practice patience. So that is patience. The next one I have no problem with. Sometimes I overdo this, and that is enthusiastic effort. And but it's also got another layer to it. So yes, it's being enthusiastic, being patient, being passionate about whatever it is you're doing, but it's also about keeping your energy up, being diligent, enduring, because we all know that it can be so easy that I'm going to tell you these practices today, and then tomorrow you might just wake up and not want to do any of it. Oh, that sounded nice, but I'm just going to keep living my life the way I am. And so this enthusiastic effort practice is about reminding ourselves again and again what a difference these practices can make in our lives. You know, there's been so many practitioners over 2,500 years. We still have to try it out for ourselves, but we do have role models of people who have done these practices and transformed the way they experience their lives and really relieved suffering. So I find that I just want to say this about enthusiastic effort. And the next one, concentration, it's sort of the combination of these two. I've often found that when people think about the Buddhist practice, for some reason, they only think about the practice of just sitting on a cushion and being silent. And I sometimes call that Olympic athlete meditation because there are people that can do it. But in my experience, it's like 5% get it right off the bat. And then the other 95% get frustrated and don't stick with it. And so what I have found works best, and this is where enthusiastic effort comes in, is that think about that every moment is a moment to practice being a bodhisattva. And when you add this then to concentration, which is the fifth practice, concentration is this opportunity to focus on our breath or whatever we're doing moment to moment. I sometimes find some of my best meditations are doing the dishes or sweeping the floor. And I encourage us all not to take any moment for granted. No moment is better than the other. Anything you're doing can be a moment of concentration, a moment of clarity and focus and self-inquiry. What thoughts are arising in this moment? I wonder why I'm thinking about that. What is that emotion that I'm feeling? To be able to name it and feel it, be deeply aware of it. What is it trying to teach me? And then to reflect. What would I rather be thinking of right now? How might I change the story about what's happening in my life and how that might transform the way I experience it? So concentration is an important practice. It can be done sitting quietly, and there's great value in that. But I don't want anybody to give up if that is too difficult, because like I said, like washing the dishes is one of my favorite concentration meditations. So find whatever works best for you. And the last one is the practice of wisdom. And it's sort of broken down into a word I love, which is discernment and understanding. And the word of discernment is so powerful because around us and within our friends and family, our culture, there's a whole lot of people telling us who we ought to be, how we ought to see the world, how we ought to act, who we ought to hang out with, what is love, what isn't love, all those things that come from social media, our parents, family members. And so I think of wisdom as being able to discern what of those messages are valuable for your life? What are they telling you that has meaning for you? Maybe there's a different message that you're telling yourself that is the way that you want to show up in the world each and every day. The wisdom is realizing the ability to make that distinction between what somebody else has told you, what somebody else has said is right for you, and instead going to that innate place of wisdom within you and knowing what is truly the right thing for you. So one of the things they say as a practice of wisdom is that we're loosening our entanglement with thoughts and emotions. And I think it of kind of being willing to dance with life, not being so sure. Early on, my teacher said, you don't have to believe everything you think. And that was an epiphany to me, that I had so many thoughts that I didn't know where they came from, but I thought every thought was important, that I had to pay attention to it. We can pay attention to our thoughts, but in a very different way in this practice of wisdom. There's that thought again. About not being good enough, or being overwhelmed, or whatever thought might cross your mind that causes you to suffer. And to honor that thought, and then to say, but how might I think differently about myself? What would be a way of thinking that would be a relief of suffering and an increase in happiness in myself and the world? And so this fresh new way to dance with life, and to not be so sure. If we have an emotion, we can feel it, and we can also transform it. Grief often is transformed. It is transformed into understanding sometimes. It is transformed into actions to reach out to others who are grieving as well. So feel our feelings is an opportunity for us to see what that emotion is trying to tell us, what that physical sensation is saying to us. So there you have it. I thought there's the refuge prayer that we often do at the beginning of Buddhist sessions on retreat. And it goes like this. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we go for refuge until fully awakened through the practice of generosity, ethics, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom. For the sake of all beings, may we realize and demonstrate our innate goodness. And so that is the summing up of everything we just talked about being a bodhisattva. So I wanted to end, and then we'll have some announcements before joys and concerns. There's many translations to Shantideva's prayer for being a bodhisattva. There's one that His Holiness the Dalai Lama says every day, and it goes like this. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And that is my wish for us all. And so with that, we've got plenty of time. I'm going to do some announcements real quick before we turn off the recording, and have joys and concerns. So if you have anything you want to share, be thinking of that. We would love if you have the ability to donate to the Cape Town Unitarians. We'd be so grateful. If you'd like to pledge a monthly sum, that would be awesome as well. You can do it through PayFast or through EFT. And we would say thank you very much for helping this community continue. Next Sunday after the Zoom service, we were planning a games day, which I know many of you enjoy. So I'm going to need to reach out to each of you to see who plans on coming. We'll have our Zoom service first, and then we'll meet at the church between 12 and 12:30. And the factor only is that we're starting our third wave. So I would want everybody to feel safe, socially distanced, and that we would have not too many people in the building at one time. And to talk about next Sunday's service, I'm hoping that Celeste or Melanie can share. Oh, it is Father's Day. Well, thank you, Celeste. I think that says our games day is going to change. Maybe we'll save that for after the third wave gets a little bit settled down. Okay, I'm going to say no games day next week, but we will reschedule it. Celeste or Melanie, do you want to say anything about the beautiful fire communion that you're planning for us next week?
I'll go ahead. Even though I think Melanie and I didn't really decide on something specific, but I just wanted to share with the community. It is one of my favorite services of the year. So this year, what we're doing, when we were thinking of what to do for winter solstice, I thought of having a fire communion ceremony as well, which incorporates the ritual of the burning bowl. Some in the community will be familiar with this ritual. For those who are not, you are encouraged to please have a piece of paper and maybe a little bowl, a ceramic maybe or glass nearby, and a candle as well. And I will take you through that ritual in terms of releasing and incorporating things into your life. I think maybe as usual, my service is going to have all sorts of different elements in it. I think it's going to be lots of fun. So I hope that you'll be able to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste. That'll be a very fun service. Let's see, I had another also to note that Shelley and Melanie, they're very excited about this workshop that they want to do. We moved it to the 3rd of July, so they had enough time to prepare. Melanie or Shelley, do you want to say something about your Saturday, 3rd of July at 2 p.m. service or workshop? If not, oh, Shelley, you want to say something?
Sorry, no, I just wanted to say that all are welcome. And the idea is really to start a discussion that allows us all to express who we are and in our context in South Africa. That's about it.
Thank you, Shelley. And will that be in person at the church, or will that be Zoom, or is that we'll decide later?
Yeah, we're maybe going to have a bit of a hybrid depending on what is possible, but I think probably mainly on Zoom. Okay, great. Thank you for that. So now, Blanche, if you'll turn off the recording, you want to get some